Hello everyone and welcome to the Constructive Criticism Network. This network is here to help you improve at Magic the Gathering at every level. From Pauper Leagues to Top 1000 Mythic, we've got you covered. If you want to hear the entire network, head on over to our sponsor at puremtgo.com, where you can hear each and every show, each and every week, and check out their sponsor, MTGO Traders, and tell them that the CCMTG Network sent you. Now sit back, enjoy the show. From YouTube, podcasts, and more, here's this week's episode from ConstructiveCriticism.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 148 of the Common Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, Christian, and I'm joined by our co-host, Brad.
Hello, everybody.
Before we got too far into this episode, I just want to remind everybody that Common Knowledge and all the podcasts on the Constructive Criticism Network are sponsored by PureMTGO.com. If you wanted to support the show, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Constructive Criticism YouTube channel. Check out Common Knowledge Patreon, where you can find Brad's weekly solo show, This Week in Pauper. With that out of the way, let's get on with the podcast for the week.
Woohoo! How's it going, buddy? It's been a while, I think.
Yeah, it's been a while. We've actually talked more recently, I guess, than our last episode was recorded, just because we tried recording an episode, wasn't very happy with the quality of it.
Yeah.
But it's still been a while since you and I have talked in person.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Still chat and whatnot, but yeah, haven't got on the old podcast in a while.
Yeah, no,
kind of a chaotic end to the year, busy start to this year, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, absolutely, with the 14 inches of snow coming your way or whatever.
Yeah, on top of the ice and slush and hellscape that is going to be St. Louis in the next couple days. But we're not the only ones. Apparently, it's like hitting the entire nation. They're calling for these sort of storms everywhere.
Oh.
And I think that's...
While we're on the air real fast, I'm just going to check the weather.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the problem, too. Like we were talking before we recorded about me working storm duty for my company and for the power company. When we have like big tornadoes, but like just St. Louis tornadoes or whatever that they call us in to help, a lot of times they can pull troublemen and linemen from other local or, utility companies from just across the river or whatever to come help them out. I think what they're worried about is this snowstorm is so big that some of those companies are going to be busy with their own problems.
Good luck. I don't envy your position, but it's very vital what you all do from what you explained to me before the show.
Yeah, it's even as a contractor for them, we're considered essential workers. So
even with that coming up, that on your mind, have you gotten a chance to play any Pauper for the past week or two?
I have. Actually, a little bit more in paper than on MTGO, which has not been the norm lately. But yeah, yes, woohoo, go me. Digitally, I brewed up a couple variations of like a black-red burn list that just happened to use a whole bunch of cards from Crimson Vow because they're good. Blood Fountain and Voldaren Epicure and I think like Vampire's Kiss and that sort of thing. I don't know if you remember the black-red deck from a couple years ago that was like Sovereign's Bite and Bump in the Night and Lightning Bolt and Terminate and all the black was like gaining you life and all the red was doing damage, and every now and then there'd be like a Thermo Alchemist or whatever. That's pretty much what it was, and it was good. It won some games, couple matches. I didn't run it in a league or anything, but that type of deck, I think unless you're on the more modern version of like the Storm style, like I wasn't running Galvanic Relay or anything like that, just Reckless Impulse. So unless you're on some sort of like relay package with Manamorphose and all these crazy cards, you're just going to get hated out because it is pretty slow. It could be pretty grindy and you don't really want it to be. So what about you? Any MTGO or paper?
I guess, I played our main topic today is about the Pauper format panel and their first round of bans and kind of our thoughts on that with some time passed. But I played the first post-ban challenge. I actually kind of intentionally, unintentionally stayed up all night and played the challenge on no sleep. Got 14th place with Teamer Cascade, kind of playing somewhere in between a mid-range and like Hansa deck, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty happy with the list. And then, I've been playing some Teamer Cascade in leagues and some Blue-Green Infect in leagues.
Yeah, I saw that. Not to interrupt you, but I saw that Teamer Cascade list in Spencer's Discord, the Heezy Game Media Discord. Now, was that something that he brewed up, or did you guys kind of brew it up together, or has he been playing that a while? Like, where did that deck come from, I guess?
To my knowledge, Spencer is kind of like the Teamer guy, I guess. Like, that's like the color combination he really likes to play. And so he posted a list that was like Teamer Cleansing Wildfire. It had Galvanic Blast, Lightning Bolts, Cleansing Wildfire. And it was like this like
Right.
true mid-range deck. And it was playing some Cascade cards. And then I recommended, I was like, hey, like, have you thought about playing Mole Drifter in this? Because he was mainly just playing blue for sideboard cards and
okay.
Fire Ice. And I was like, man, I really love the Fire Ice, but I think you could also play Mole Drifter. And he was like, yeah, I really like the Mole Drifter. And I was like, and if you're like worried about playing more blue cards with this deck's mana base, which I don't think you necessarily should, just because Cleansing Wildfire does a lot to fix your mana base.
Yeah.
You can play like 2 snow lands to go get, because he was playing like a few copies of Acid Moss. And so that kind of morphed into him coming up with a few different teamer lists. And then I kind of knew, like, I really liked the Hansa decks. And so because he was coming up with some good teamer ideas, like, he didn't supply me with a list, but I built a list based on the stuff that we had discussed in the Discord, I guess. And, I built the list and I was like, yeah, this like looks powerful. I really liked his idea of playing Fire Ice.
Mm-hmm.
I had never played that in the teamer decks, but it was very powerful. It really helped. Like, whenever I thought about it, I expected elves to be like pretty popular.
Yeah.
And I think that deck's really strong. And it's like, well, that'll really help like in the main deck of that matchup. It really helps in the fairies matchup. And I played against elves, played against fairies, beat them both.
Yeah, there's a lot of
it was
X1s running around our format right now.
Yeah. And and then the sideboard that I had running, I probably would have changed some of it. I didn't have a lot of Affinity hate, which Affinity ended up having a few top 8 set challenge.
Yeah.
But I just thought nobody was going to be playing it. I probably should have had more, even though I didn't play against it. I was playing like Surl's Packmate in the sideboard, which was really good. It came in a lot of matchups.
Yeah, I saw somebody on Twitter ask you about that specific card. Like, hey, this is a pretty interesting sideboard choice. When do you bring it in? That sort of thing. And I guess I'd never really thought about, because I played a handful of green X Cascade lists, and I hardly ever think about putting creatures in my sideboard, just in any deck necessarily, especially not one that I always think should be in the main deck as it is. Like, where'd you bring that in, and what was that for?
So there are a lot of matchups where I don't think playing land destruction is necessarily good. So like, for example, to me, I don't like land destruction. I like it against blue-red fairies. I don't like it against blue-black. The reason why is blue-black tends to be a slower deck. They're fine mulliganing to hands with more lands. They take a lot more setup to kind of get their game plan going. Whereas blue-red tends to play more as like a tempo deck, at least for a lot of players and a lot of lists.
And they don't really run a lot of mountains usually.
Yeah. So, like in that matchup, right? Like, it's a very grindy matchup. They have a lot of hard removal for your Cascaders. So I'll bring in the pack mates and kind of cut some of the really fast mana, I guess. So like, like I'll cut the Thermokarst, I might cut an Acid Moss, and then bam, can add 3 pack mates to where even if you're not playing with the fast mana, you can pay 2 mana to foretell it, and the next turn pay 2 mana to actually play it and have a removal spell. Like, it's very good in that sort of matchup. And then there were 4 cards that I played that I played 2 Mole Drifter and 2 Entourage of Tress. And those 2 cards served a similar place in times you would play them, but not really an effect, right? Like, they both generate card advantage, but one of them is more of like, this deck is kind of as like this really fast combo deck, and the other one is this mid-rangey grindy deck. So in times when I wanted to cut the Mole Drifters because I didn't think like the fast combos were good, I would bring in 2 Packmate over the Mole Drifters to kind of supplement the Entourage of Tress. And then, if I was cutting the Entourage of Tress, I might bring in just like some other value cards. Like, if like I wanted to like keep the combo stuff going, I might bring in Pulsamarasas.
Right.
That way, if they dealt with the Mole Drifter, I could bring it back and play it again the next turn.
Right.
So the pack mates came in a lot of matchups for a lot of different reasons, but basically anything where land destruction was bad or grinding is good, I guess.
Okay.
Is
now,
the short way to say what I said.
Would you try this deck again, just taking out the land destruction package as a whole and putting in pack mates? Like, make that the main deck?
Yeah.
Or did you really like the land destruction strategy?
Yeah, I'm really partial to having decks that, when you're running hot, are very powerful, and when you're not running hot, are not as powerful. So I really like the land destruction in the main deck,
Okay.
but I think it's a perfectly valid
Sure.
choice to not want to play all the land destruction, play more of a mid-range game. In fact, that might even be better. It's just like, for me, like, I'm very comfortable knowing that if I hit the right matchups and continue to draw like really good hands, there's almost nothing that can beat, like nothing can really beat, Arbor Elf into Utopia Sprawl, into Acid Moss,
Right.
into Boarding Party, into Entourage of Trust, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much
And
game over right there.
yeah, and I feel very comfortable knowing that I play a very swingy deck like that sometimes.
Okay. Yeah, I can get that.
But yeah,
Ride the highs and ride the lows.
yeah, and like Spencer's list with Bridges and Cleansing Wildfires and Galvanic Blasts, like, I think that would also be a lot of fun.
Sure.
I think Teamer has a lot of different ways you can build it, and I think they would all be pretty good right now.
Yeah. Yep, I think so.
And then with Blue-Green Infect, that's another deck I've been playing. I started with the very low land count, playing 4 land grant version. Oh my goodness.
Was that the cat?
Yeah, that was the cat.
Now, is this like a spur of the moment thing? Because I remember you tweeting out it was like 2 words, infect good? ?
Yeah, it was a spur of the moment thing. I didn't think about it too much. I thought that as Pauper was finding its way, some uninteractive, go all in on your thing decks would be good. I felt like that going into the first weekend of challenges, right?
Okay.
Where I felt like Elves would be really good.
Right.
I was really high on Elves. I was really high on Burn. Not saying that those decks don't interact at all, but they're very much let's do our thing primarily.
Yeah, we need to do our thing before you do your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking to myself, another deck that's like that is Infect. I've always been partial to Blue-Green Infect, especially because, well, if my logic is that Elves and Burn and stuff is good, well, Burn has a very good Infect matchup. So I want to play more creatures that they can point their Burn at, instead of them just removing one creature and winning because you don't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I think Elves is good, I want the cards that say unblockable on them. So, I want Blighted Agent, and I think the cards
Slither
called
Blade or whatever.
Yeah, it's just unblockable 1/1 with Infect.
Yeah.
And then Distortion Strike is a single blue mana. Target creature gets +1/+1/+1/+0, and is unblockable this turn, and it has Rebound.
Yeah, that's huge.
So,
the rebound is very nice.
Yeah.
On that one.
Yeah, exactly. So, if I followed my own logic, it made sense to play blue-green instead of mono-green.
So really, yeah, that choosing Simic over mono-green was actually a meta call, not just, I like blue-green, so let me play this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could be the wrong one, right? I'm sure somebody could say something like, well, why don't you just play Ram through or something?
Right.
Okay, guy, you got me.
Yeah.
But
got it.
But yeah, no, I started off, I was like, is this any good? And then I think I posted another tweet, and I was like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
And I just kept playing it because
it was only
fun.
7 minutes later.
Yeah. And I kept playing it because it was fun. I think I played 3 leagues total.
Yeah.
And it was the third league was a 3-2. And I was like, all right, maybe there's something here.
Yeah.
I haven't done better than that since with it.
But you
I've
kept
still
at
been
it,
playing
though.
it. Yeah. I think it's a perfectly fine choice, to run through some leagues, have some fun with.
And it's got to be
kind of
it's gotta be a quick league too, an hour and a half maybe.
Yeah, sometimes it would be if you were playing at a reasonable pace.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't. Oh. It's not like I was intentionally stalling, right? But in my mind, it's well, if I feel like my deck can do its thing in 3 minutes, it means I got 22 minutes to work with and figure out exact percentages on what I think the best choice is, right?
Now, were you trying to
because the goal?
Were you trying to tune it between leagues, or did you just kind of run the same deck out there each time? And
yeah, no, I was trying to tune it the first time I was playing. So I played it in the practice room and then played a league with it.
Yeah.
And I was playing a land grant, 7 land version or something like that.
Oh.
That I found on the internet and slightly updated.
Yeah.
I didn't like that. I think maybe there's a world where that's a good deck list. But to me,
but I think
it
that
just
world was
felt
2016, 2017.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
The land grant was hot for a while, but it has been a while.
Yeah. So for me, whenever I was looking at it, is the land grant version kind of does the same thing that I think the mono green version does really well. It's like when this is working, it's going really fast and it's winning super quick. It's taking your opponents by surprise.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I don't really care about taking people by surprise.
Yeah.
Because I think like being a turn or two slower is fine in what I expect to play against with the unblockable stuff, right? Because it's not like they'll gum up the board. Like, so I think I can still win being a turn or two slower. So then I moved to a version that was playing like Ponders and Preordains and more blue, some tap lands. And that's when I started winning a little bit more, was having some control over your draws. The final list that I played, or that I've been playing, has 4 Ponder, and that's it as far as like card draw, card advantage stuff. I guess technically there's a Rot Wolf in there for like creature mirrors, but that's very rarely card draw.
I always felt like that. Like, I don't think Infect has to be this like gotcha strategy. It certainly can do that. I've been killed turn 2 by mono green Infect before, but I don't think it has to be that necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also like something is like whenever you view it as a gotcha strategy, you really start to lose your path to win the games, I guess.
Right.
So it's like, oh, I haven't killed you by turn 3. Like, you shouldn't feel bad about that.
Right.
Like, you shouldn't be like, I haven't killed him by turn 3. Oh, no, 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 right? You should be like, I haven't killed him by turn 3, but by turn 3, I worked towards, like, a kill, like, and I think I can lock this game up by, like, turn 6 or 7, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
There are, especially with a lot of, like, what the best decks are in Pauper, right? It's like, you're playing, like, a creature strategy with some interaction to protect your stuff, but not much. Like, you're probably going to have a creature or 2 removed against blue-black Fae.
Yeah,
like,
you're probably going to lose something.
Like, yeah, like, you're probably not going to beat them 2 games on turn 3 each.
Right.
Even with, like, your really good draws.
Yeah.
So
sometimes
like,
with those decks, you
do?
can take game 1 in 3 turns, but then the next 2 games will go to time. Like, they will draw out very long.
Yeah, so it's like, what can I do to, maybe not win this game by turn 3, but by turn 5, make a decision that's better than my opponent can make, to where, by turn 8, I'm really starting to win the game.
Yeah.
And, that's like, honestly, we've talked about it before, whenever somebody's first getting into Magic, I recommend that, like, if they're wanting to kind of get into competitive stuff, they play these, like, decks that can go really quickly, and you can play them on autopilot. So when you're not having to play them on autopilot, you can really tank, right? So, like, there are times that I'm spending, like, 4 minutes on my Ponder. Like, do I want to shuffle or keep these?
Yeah.
And it's like, like, you have the luxury of trying to think 4 turns in advance with a deck like that.
Right.
And it's not like, on Moto, you have a chess clock, right? So it's not like your opponent, like, your opponent should never be upset. Like, they should just ask you to play faster.
Yeah.
If they feel like you're, like, playing too slow.
Yeah.
But, like, you don't have to worry about that on Moto, right? Like, you have your 25 minutes, take it all.
Yeah, sure. That's what it's there for.
But yeah, so tell me about, I know you said you played some Black Red Burn on Moto.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about what you did at the LGS.
I did. I decided to go to the LGS. I kind of told myself that this year, 2022, I was going to try to get back into, and I hadn't been, the last time I played there was a Saturday, I think the Saturday right before or right after Modern Horizons 2 released. So it had been 6, 7, 8 months, something like that. And Twitter buddy, Nabamin1, he lives locally, lives in St. Louis. He is originally from Brazil, I believe. So I talked him into meeting me up there, and we got to finally meet in person and play some games. We had about 6 people show up, which has sadly been kind of normal lately. Not huge crowds, but enough to get a 3 or 4 round tournament going, which was nice. I took one of my boxes. I had a couple dozen decks. I wasn't sure what to play, and I didn't know that Mono Black Control had won a challenge, I believe, like the day before or something like that, or that Saturday, I think it actually was, until I had picked my choice. I played Mono Black MBC, Mono Black Control at the event on Saturday. It was kind of down between Mono Black Control, Boros Monarch, and Jund, and then Tordex was like a distant fourth. I wasn't sure which one I was going to play, and then I thought, well, I haven't played Mono Black in a while. Let's break it out, sort of thing. I wasn't feeling the Boros. I knew what kind of decks, just because I've been playing there for so long, and the people that did show up to play were regulars. I kind of knew what to expect as far as their decks and play style and sort of meta, if you will, for 6 people. I just wasn't feeling the Boros at the end of the day. Jund, I'm not happy with the way I have it built since the Bonders Ornament ban, so I didn't want to run that out there. Tordex, I'm still working on a newish build, and it's not quite, I don't think it's quite competitive yet. So I landed on Mono Black Control, and I ended up going 3-0 in the tournament and winning the whole thing. So won some sweet store credit. It was awesome. It was one of those, it was probably the best tournament, league, whatever you want to call it, that I've ever played. Like, it never felt like I didn't have it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's the cool thing about playing locally is it's really fun to feel like you have bragging rights over your friends for like a week.
Yeah.
And that was something that like I really enjoyed about playing like FNMs and stuff. Was like, and I'm really excited to get back into it. Actually, there's a monthly Pauper tournament that goes on here that I'm going to start going to. They're not having a February one because they're doing a pre-release, but March I'm going to it. But like more so than winning an event, it's like cool to be like, yeah, like I beat somebody that I've known for 2 years. They're one of like my pretty good friends. We're going to go get food after this.
Yeah.
And it's like they have to live for the next week or month or however long knowing like their second best.
Yeah, and it's almost kind of nice knowing that next time you walk into an event, you sort of have that target on your back.
Yeah, and like, you know, it's not like a super serious thing,
no, it's
right?
totally
Like,
not.
I hope nobody hears that thinking it's like some like super braggadocious thing. It's just like it's like fantasy football, you know?
Yeah, and if you
like
know me, you definitely know I'm not any kind of spike. This is like the only time I legitimately, almost consciously spiked an event. Like, I knew we had 6 players. I was one of them. I knew what 2 of them were going to play because they play it all the time. Nabaman, I knew that he only had, in paper, he only has Boggles and Burn. So I knew it was going to be one of those 2. The 5th player or 4th player always plays some sort of brew, kind of like I do. And then his daughter was actually playing too, and I had no idea what she was going to play, so I just kind of wrote that off. I never actually did face her in the tournament at all, but yeah, it ended up being a good choice, and it was crazy. It was like every opening hand was 2 to 3 swamps, a Gary, and a bunch of removal spells, and that's all it was. Like every game, it was awesome.
Like, yeah, man, I'm glad you had a good time. You know, congrats on the wins. It's always good whenever people that you know are like, yeah, man, I played locally and did really well. Especially, you know, whenever they're playing a deck that you don't necessarily expect to do well in like the grand scheme of things, I guess. Like, obviously, Mono Black has been on the upswing recently.
Right.
But if you had told me that was going to be the case before that weekend, I'd have been like, no.
Yeah, and it was like, I don't know where I built my Mono Black list from, but it like, nowhere in the 75 are there oubliettes. Nowhere in the 75 are there Kumbaj witches. I'm just running extra removal, and it paid off. Whatever works, I guess.
Congrats, man. I guess now it's kind of funny, right? Because what we've been playing for the last 2 weeks in Pauper is like a really consistent, like basically like a pre-show segment. But it really fits in well with this week's main topic, which is, you know, the fact that we talked about it for so long kind of, I think, spoils our opinions on the main topic, which is, you know, the Pauper format panel, how they're doing. I assume a lot of the listeners know what that is now.
Yeah.
For those that don't, the Pauper format panel is a group of 7 people involved in the Pauper community that are basically going to be making ban recommendations now.
They're going to monitor the format for Wizards.
Yeah. We had our first wave of bans based on their recommendations. And so, you know, we're just kind of talking about what we thought of those bans and then the post-ban meta. And I don't know about you, I'm very happy with it. Like, anytime I can play, you know, multiple teamer decks and some blue-green infect and some fairies,
right?
And feel good about all those choices and not just one of them. Makes me feel pretty happy with the format.
Yeah, and the little bit that I have played online since the bans, granted, I typically play bad decks and I'm okay with it, but nothing felt particularly bad. You know what I mean? It feels like almost everything has a shot to a certain extent. Like you said, your blue-green infect deck feels like a solid 3-2 deck. I don't think you could have said that before the bans at all.
For those that don't know, the 3 cards that got banned were Affinity to 2 major hits. Atog was banned, and Prophetic Prism was banned. Prophetic Prism was seeing play in other decks as well, and they also preemptively, I think, took out Bonder's Ornament.
Yeah, Prophetic Prism was part of the Bonder's Ornament announcement, sort of under the Tron umbrella, but it hurts. The banning of Prism hurts both decks.
Yeah, so, you know, they basically took out Affinity, made the 5-color mana in Pauper much worse, so you're not getting like a bunch of 5-color good stuff decks. Not that that's not possible, by the way, with like wildfire packages.
Oh, sure. No, it can still be done. It's just Tron was doing it way too easily.
Yeah, and they basically preemptively decided like with Affinity gone, Tron could become a problem, and what you don't want is bans that take out one problem and lead to a second problem, especially for the first ban announcement from the panel, right? Like, because the thing is, if Tron does become a too good deck, everybody's going to be like, see, I told you guys, should have done something.
Right.
So
so they did.
They went ahead and did it.
They sort of had that foresight. Like, okay, we know that Affinity is going to be the number one thing that we're going to ban, but they sort of looked ahead and said, okay, well, once we do ban Affinity or cards out of Affinity, what do we think the next problem is going to be? And that's where it sort of lined up, is how I took it anyway.
I will say that I assumed that they wouldn't ban the Tron lands. Before, I didn't think that they would attack Tron at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how I feel about them doing it still, although I lean on the side of it's probably a good thing or at least okay.
Right. I for sure thought they were going to hit the Flicker's Ghostly, Flicker Ephemerate before. Like, Bonder's Ornament and Prophetic Prism were like nowhere on my ban radar at all.
Yeah, that I was feeling pretty confident that maybe we would see like Ephemerate go and stuff. So I was right there with you that if they attacked the Tron deck, they would attack the actual Flicker play pattern and not the mana fixing part of it. But, a complaint that you and I have both had on the show before about Pauper is that there are some decks that just get to play 5 colors just because they can.
Right.
With almost no cost.
With no no drawbacks at all.
Yeah, so with some reflection, I'm pretty happy about it.
Prophetic Prism, I'm pretty lukewarm on. I think I only really played it in decks that were tier decks as it is. I never brewed with it, I never really played with it much. And Bonder's Ornament kind of hurt because a handful of the Cascade decks played it to help them ramp out a little quicker and that sort of thing. And it was kind of a fun card to brew with or use in like a heavy control or grindy multicolor deck, but it definitely makes sense for it not to be in the format anymore.
Honestly, the Pauper format panel, I was relatively high on it when it was announced, but really, for my opinion, great job from them for acting quickly. Like, as soon as it was announced, like literally a week later, they were like, all right, there's going to be some bans. So,
yep.
In my mind, they did well. And then also, with some of the spoilers coming out, which I'm sure we'll talk about next week on the show, they're already like talking about which cards they're going to be watching from the new set, which is a very satisfactory performance.
Which we've never heard before.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, hearing him say that there were already that the cards that aren't even playable yet in our format because they're too new or haven't been released yet, they're already on the watch list. I think that was more satisfying than actually having the bans.
And, a part of the thing, too, is I think that there are some people that maybe get upset whenever they hear about that because it's like, oh, how do you know that these cards are going to be too good? So I do also kind of want to reiterate that something being on a watch list isn't like a preemptive ban, right? Like, it's hey, like, we recognize that this card could be really good. And so it's almost like not necessarily these cards are on a watch list, but the decks that they could fit in are. Right? So, like, there's the new card that's basically a cheaper Ninja the Deep Hours coming out. I forget its name. I think it might be like Moonblade Shinobi or something.
No, that's already a card we have. The one that made that makes illusion tokens or something like that.
Okay. Everybody ignored the name then.
But it is, you are similar. It's close. I just can't remember it.
Yeah. And they're like, hey, this card's on the watch list.
Yeah.
A lot of people took that to mean like, hey, this card's probably going to get banned quickly. I read it as more of like, watch the fairy decks, because if like 8 Ninja becomes too good, maybe not this card, but something from those decks will need to be hit. And it could be this card.
It could be this card. It could be like, Spellstarter Sprite. It could be anything.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also like, something being on a watch list is also like, hey, like we could be wrong. Because if they really thought something was going to be a problem, like everybody knew like Chatterstorm was going to be a problem, right?
Yeah, from like the minute it was spoiled, they're like, please, day 0, ban this. Don't even let us play with it.
Exactly, right? Like, I would hope that like if there was anything that was like obviously an issue like that, they would be like, hey, this isn't on a watch list. This is like on a probably recommended to be banned within the first week list.
Yeah. Let's let people have a little bit of fun, and then we'll ban it. So
good job to the Pauper format panel. I've been having a lot of fun playing it. Literally right now, if I go play a league, I might not play the same deck twice for like 3 leagues.
Yeah, and it's been a long time since I think anybody can really say that.
Yeah, and like obviously there's some decks that are like you play against more than others. Like, I play against blue, black, Fae, and elves a fair bit.
Mm-hmm. Sure,
but it's not like 3 times in a league like I was
Right.
having to play against Affinity.
Right.
And even Tron, like there have been some mono green Tron and some blue green Tron decks running around. So I'm happy that those decks were able to survive in some way, shape, or form, even if they're never going to be tier 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's those decks. I think they both showed up in the 5-0 dump last week or last Wednesday, and it's decks like those that are the reason I don't want the Tron lands to be banned. I want big beater Tron and Ulamog's Crushers and all this great, wretched Griffs and all this stuff to go have fun with.
Any other thoughts from you with just on format, meta, anything like that?
I like how the Affinity players still adapted to the new meta. We still have a strong Affinity deck. It's not like it was completely wrecked. It's not like Affinity's no longer an archetype. There's still very good Affinity decks out there. They've just altered. They've changed their path a little bit, used some different cards. Same with Tron. Right after the ban, Tron shows up in the 5-0 list with a bunch of big creatures. So I like seeing what's coming out. And I think it was tweeted about quite a bit, but the first 5-0 deck dump on that Wednesday after the ban, granted, it contained some decks that had the ban cards in it because that spans a whole week. The league results do. But there was 40 decks in that deck dump. That's huge. That's almost double what it was before the ban, and I don't know the last time I can remember it being above like 32 or so.
Yeah, there was also a point in time, I want to say Alex Ullman tweeted about it. There were like more than 400 players in the league at once.
Mm-hmm. That's
which
been a
has
long
not happened
time.
in a really long time.
Yeah. A very long time. So that's definitely a good sign. I guess I don't care about specific cards as much as I care about our specific community, if that makes sense. Like, generally ban whatever you want, as long as the numbers keep going up and the games are still fun and everyone's having a good time. Now, I hate losing decks. I think I lost because of the ban, I lost 5 decks out of my battle box. I'm going to have to either just disassemble or alter them, to whatever shows up. But that's obviously not a concern to anyone but me. So, just keep the format fun and decks fun, and everybody will be happy.
I would say, they always make the joke like bigger number, better person on social media. But I actually think it's sort of true. Like bigger number of players in Pauper means a better format.
Yep, I do too. It means more brews, more interesting decks. I don't think there's any coincidence that we saw 400, 500, 600 people in the leagues and we had a 40 deck 5-0 list. Right. That's not counting the hundreds of decks that went 4-1 or 3-2 or whatever.
Yep.
So
exactly. I don't know. I've been pretty happy with Pauper. Sounds like you have as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to leave this episode of Common Knowledge on a good note.
Yeah, I think so. Unless you had anything else to add or...
No, whatever. Absolutely not. I'm excited to play in another challenge this weekend. I'm going to be playing Teamer. I'm going to try and rope a few other people into playing Teamer along with me.
There you go. You working on that same list, or are you going to tweak it a little bit based off what you had the last time you ran it out there?
I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to play. I'm going to try this weekend, Spencer and I, to run a league or two together.
Okay.
And kind of compare notes on what we've been seeing from the deck. Like, I feel pretty confident in my opinions on it, and I really respect him as a player, and I'm sure he feels pretty confident in his.
Sure.
So it's going to be fun to, kind of compare notes and see if we can come up with something really good for the challenge.
Yeah. Have you also noticed, pretty much since the bans or since the PFP was announced, the sheer number of, well-known or professional Magic players that have started playing Pauper?
Yeah, I have.
It's gotten crazy.
It's nice.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
Pauper is everywhere, baby.
It is.
We're the next Modern.
I'll take it.
Right. That's going to do it for this episode of Common Knowledge. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can find me on Twitter at JustGodDad. Brad, where can they find you?
At Pauper_B on Twitter or BradDrackV on MTGO.
Yeah. Or you can feel free to shoot us an email over at commonknowledgemtg@gmail.com. If you have any questions on the Pauper format, MTGO, or anything else, please email us. Leave a comment down below. Thanks again to our sponsor, PureMTGO.com, as well as the Constructive Criticism Network, for letting us be part of it. Don't forget to meow. Don't forget to go check out the Common Knowledge Patreon. He's doing some great stuff with the solo show.
Yep. It's been a few weeks, but I need to get back into it now that everything's fresh and new.
Right. And yeah, last, certainly not least, thank you for listening. Take very good care of each other.
And never stop playing teamwork.